Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're going to be doing a Burning Abyss deck profile. So I am really excited for this one because this deck just went to complete full power today. And I'm bringing you probably one of the first Burning Abyss deck profiles on all of YouTube with the new unlimited Graph and Seer Malabranches of the Burning Abyss. Now I am really excited about this because I actually started picking up this deck when it first was released back in Duelist Alliance, and you guys know how I love Duelist Alliance decks. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell on there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below because we have all those awesome rewards, you guys, like getting your name description for every single video, getting a signed card in the mail, or even getting Twist deck profile every single month to your patron along with test hands. And definitely, since I'm gonna be probably one of the first, hopefully, on YouTube doing an update of this, definitely give me a like and please subscribe. So let's go ahead and get straight on into this and see what we can do. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Skarm Malabranch of the Burning Abyss. So if you guys don't know what Malabranches of the Burning Abyss do, they have 2 effects. They all have 2 effects and they all share the same first effect. So we're just going to go over that effect one time. That if you control no spells or traps, you can special summon this card from your hand, but you can only activate either of the dot effects once per turn. They also share an ability to control a monster that's not a Burning Abyss card, then you have to destroy this card, which is not that big of a deal because a lot of times you're only going to control Burning Abyss monsters anyways, which is totally fine. And it also shares the ability that during the end phase, this has the ability that during the end phase, if this card was sent to the graveyard this turn, then you get to add 1 level 3 Dark Fiend monster from your deck to your hand. Now this was actually a revolutionary card in Skarm because a lot of cards have actually spawned from this card's effect and it's become its own term in Yu-Gi-Oh, being it's the Skarm of the deck, which is kind of cool if you guys didn't know that. There's your Yu-Gi-Oh trivia of the day. So now we're going to get into the cards that just got from semi-limit to unlimit, which is 3 copies of Graph Malabranch of the Burning Abyss. So Graph Malabranch of the Burning Abyss has its own unique effect that if this card is sent to the graveyard, then you get to special summon 1 Burning Abyss monster from your deck onto your side of the field, except another copy of Graph. Then we play 3 copies of Seer, which also just went to 3, which has the similar effect, but it special summons from the graveyard instead of from the deck, which is a really good effect that if this card is sent to the graveyard, you get to target a Burning Abyss monster in your graveyard, except another copy of itself, and special summon that monster back to your side of the field, which is an insanely good effect. We then play 3 copies of Farfa Malabranch of the Burning Abyss, and no, I don't mean Farfa, the Yugi tuber, but shoutouts to him. What this card does is if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target 1 monster on the field and banish it until the end phase, which is a really good effect to be able to just immediately get a card off the field. And just, if it has a link material, it just immediately gets rid of those link materials. This card was really good during the Xyz format, where everybody was playing Xyz and Pendulums, because this card would just get rid of the materials, and then pretty much the monster would come back during the end phase, and have no materials. But this really forces your opponent to use their cards up to deal with your cards, like this particular monster. We then play a single copy of Barbar Malabranch of the Burning Abyss. Barbar has the ability that this card is sent to the graveyard. You can target up to 3 Burning Abyss in your graveyard, except another copy of itself, and banish them, and if you do, inflict 300 points of damage to your opponent for each one that's banished, which is a pretty good effect just to be able to get him on the field and basically, or get him in the graveyard and banish those cards out of the graveyard that already aren't really doing anything, and help you just burn your opponent out for that extra 900 points. And it's the biggest Burning Abyss monster in the main deck at 1700. We then play a single copy of Libic Malabranch of the Burning Abyss. This used to be a 2 of. I just feel like it's a 1 of now that we have Seer and Graph, because it kind of made up for what Seer and Graph did, but now it's just a 1 of to me, because if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can special summon a level 3 Dark Fiend monster from your hand, but you negate its effects, so it doesn't destroy itself if you have a another monster on the field, which is pretty good. And then play a single copy of Alec. This card's really good that if this card is sent to the graveyard, you get to target a face-up monster on the field and negate its effects until the end of the turn, which is a good effect to be able to just give you an additional negation on your side of the field. It can be super helpful, especially if you have something like Beatrice that can send stuff from deck to graveyard. We then play 3 copies of Tour Guide of the Underworld, because this card is also unlimited now. That was unlimited, I think, on the last list, which is still a really good card and really amazing this card went to 3. Then when it's normal summon, you get to special summon 1 level 3 Fiend monster monster from your hand or deck, but it cannot be used as synchro material, but who cares? We're not going to be synchroing in this deck at all anyways. We then play 3 copies of Fiendish Rhino Warrior, which ought to be a Burning Abyss by itself, but this card makes it so your Fiend-type monsters you control, except Fiendish Rhino Warrior, cannot be destroyed by battle or by card effect. When this card is sent to the graveyard, you get to send 1 Fiend monster from your deck to the graveyard, which basically is a walking Foolish Burial and protects all your Burning Abyss from their own destruction effects, which is super helpful, and I really like that ability to just immediately protect all of your Burning Abyss monsters from their own destruction effects if you control this card. And this card actually came out before Cherubini did, and this card was like revolutionary for the deck in helping it be able to kind of out itself because of them destroying each other, which is good and bad all at once because their effects will resolve. So that's it for the Fiend monsters. Let's get into the Phantom Knight engine. When you guys know how I am about Phantom Knights, I love Phantom Knights nowadays, and so we're going to get straight into those. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Torn Scales. Torn Scales is really good in this deck because what this card does is you get to discard a card, which will trigger all of your Burning Abyss monsters' effects, to send a Phantom Knight card from your deck to the graveyard, except another copy of itself. And if another Phantom Knight card is in your graveyard is banished while this card's in your graveyard, you can special summon it, but banish it when it leaves the field, and you can only use each effect of the Phantom Knights of Torn Scales once per turn. So this card's a really good level 3 monster just to special summon to your side of the field, and discard a card to search a Phantom Knight and send it to the graveyard. Like for instance, a copy of Fogblade, which then can be banished to be able to special summon another Phantom Knight monster from your graveyard. We then play 3 copies of Silent Boots. Silent Boots can special summon itself if you control another Phantom Knight monster, which is super helpful, and if you also can banish this card from your graveyard to add a Phantom Knight spell or trap from your deck to your hand, which is really helpful. We then play 2 copies of Ancient Cloak. You really only need 2. I really don't think you need any more than 2. And it has the ability that if this card is in attack position, you can target a dark monster on the field, change it to defense, and if you do, that monster gains 800 attack until the end of the turn. Then you can manage this card from your graveyard to add the Phantom Knight card from your deck to your hand. That is very important that it says the Phantom Knight because it can't search Fogblade, which is not that big of a deal, but you can't search Fogblade off this card. We then play a single copy of the Phantom Knights of Stained Greaves. Stained Greaves helps you go into rank 4 plays, which you do play a single rank 4 in the extra deck because it can change itself to a level 4 monster that if a Phantom Knight monster is special summoned to the field, you can special summon this card from your hand, and then you can increase its level by 1, and you can manage this card from the graveyard, special summon a Phantom Knight monster from your hand, and then increase that monster's level by 1, so it helps you make rank 4 plays with the greatest of ease. We then play a single copy of Ragged Gloves. Ragged Gloves is super helpful in the deck too, because it has a really neat effect that if it's in the graveyard, you can banish it to be able to send another Phantom Knight card from your deck to the graveyard. And it just says Phantom Knight card, so it can be any of the cards in the deck. And also if a Dark Xyz monster uses as a material to summon itself, like a copy of, for instance, Breaksword, then you're going to make that monster gain an additional 1,000 attack points to go to 3,000 in the case of Breaksword. We then play 3 copies of Ash Blossom. Ash Blossom comes in pretty handy in this deck because it's a level 3 monster that you can, in a crunch situation, use it as a material to overlay. I know that's kind of weird, but it does come up sometimes. It's very rare, but it does. And it also has the ability you can send it from your hand to the graveyard to either negate your opponent from basically touching their deck at all, because you can make it so they can't add cards from deck to hand, special summon from deck, or send cards from deck to graveyard, which is pretty good. We then play 2 copies of Effect Veiler as well. The Effect Veilers come in handy because Impermanence just is not that great in this deck because of you having so many Phantom Knight cards, like your copy of Shade Brigandine. Just turn Shade Brigandine off, so you don't want to play Impermanence in this deck. The other card that I was considering putting in here is 2 copies of Ghost Ogre and an E-Telly, but that would bump the deck up to 42, so I did not actually put in that in the deck. So if you want to play 2 copies of Ghost Ogre over the Effect Veiler, you can, and then throw 1 copy of Emergency Teleport in the deck, which will help you get your additional copies of your Ghost Ogre on your side of the field to use for rank 3 plays if you want to go that route. I didn't, but you can. And plus, Ghost Ogre is live on the field, which is another valid argument to playing Ghost Ogre over Effect Veiler. So, that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the single spell that we play in the entire deck, and that is 1 copy of Foolish Burial. You only need Foolish Burial. This basically says activate literally any of your Phantom Knight monsters effects, or literally activate any of your Burning Abyss effects. This card is essentially, if you've ever played Uno, this is essentially a wild card that says this card has every monster's effect on it, which is really cool. So that's the only spell you play in the entire deck. We then play 3 traps or 4 traps and a trap monster, and that is 3 copies of Fogblade and a single copy of Shade Brigandine. So Fogblade, as you know, is pretty much Fiendish Chain. If you guys don't know what Fogblade does, and you do know what Fiendish Chain does, that's going to help you out a lot with understanding this card, because what it does is you activate this card by targeting an effect monster on the field, and that face-up monster's effect is negated, and also that monster cannot attack, or it cannot be attacked either, which is pretty cool. It basically locks the monster into its zone, but it can't be basically used except for as a material for a monster from the extra deck, which is pretty good. And if this card is sent to the graveyard, if that monster is sent to the graveyard, then you can send this card as well, which is pretty cool. It helps out to get this card off the field, and you destroy this card. You manage this card from your graveyard to target one face-up or one Phantom Knight monster in your graveyard and special summon it, but banish it when it leaves the field, which is also really good because it counts as a monster reborn in the deck as well. Now, Shade Brigandine, you just basically the same turn it's set. If you don't have a trap in your graveyard, you can just immediately activate it and have your level 4 monster on the field, which is super helpful. It would help more if it was a level 3, but it also helps a little bit with it being a level 4 because of your rank 4 that you play in the extra deck. Now, this is really helpful because you can get these out on the field really easily, especially with Rusty Bardige now being at 1. As the previous list, I believe it was, that it came back to 1. But this card is super helpful at getting you additional materials on your side of the field. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. I don't know if you can tell, but I am super excited for BA being at full power. Like, I love this deck. So we're going to go ahead and play 2 copies of Dante. You really don't need more than 2 of Dante. Dante's fine at 2. What this card does is once per turn, you can detach material from this card and then choose a number between 1 and 3. Send that many cards from the top of your deck to the graveyard, and it gains 500 for every card that was sent to the graveyard. If it's involved in a battle, then you can switch it to defense position. And if it's sent to the graveyard, you get to target a Burning Abyss in your graveyard, except another copy of itself, and then add it to your hand. If it's another Dante, you can do it, but cannot be the same Dante. We then play a single copy of Beatrice because you can overlay Beatrice on top of Dante. Haha, no pun intended. But what this card does is you can overlay this card by sending a Burning Abyss monster from your hand to the graveyard, and then target a Dante using a 1 Dante monster you control as material. And then it also has the ability that if this card is summoned this way, the following effect cannot be used the same turn, but you can once per turn during either player's turn detach a material from this card and then send 1 card from your deck to the graveyard. And if this card in your possession is destroyed by an opponent's card, either by battle or by card effect, and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon 1 Burning Abyss monster from your extra deck, ignoring its complete summoning conditions, which is our single copy of Dante Pilgrim. So Dante Pilgrim is a good card because this is basically when Dante ascends from the Burning Abyss, which is kind of a cool aspect. But what it does is it cannot be targeted by your opponent's card effects, and then once per turn during either player's turn, you can send a Burning Abyss card from your hand to the graveyard to draw a card. And if this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, or it leaves the field because you control it and sent to the graveyard by an opponent's card effect, you can send 1 random card from your opponent's hand to the graveyard. So it sometimes can be a little bit of a difficult card for your opponent to out. We then play a single copy of Cherubini, rounding out the Burning Abyss cards in the extra deck, and this card's really good for the entire deck because it lets you send level 3 monsters from the deck to the graveyard, and then monsters in the zones that it points to cannot be destroyed by card effects, so protects your Burning Abyss monsters from themselves, which is funny. Double A Zeus because it works ridiculously well with Dante blowing the board, because if once per turn if an XZ monster's battle, you can XZ summon this card on top of that monster, or on top of 1 XZ monster you control. And then you can quick effect, which is a quick effect during either player's turn. You can detach 2 materials on this card to send all cards on the field to the graveyard, and then once per turn, if another card you control is destroyed by battle or by card effect, you can attach a card from your hand, deck, or extra deck this card as a material, which is ridiculous. This card is essentially the new Burning Abyss boss monster, and it's like, oh my god, thunder. Oh my god, lightning. This card is crazy. We then play a single copy of Levenair the Sea Dragon. This card brings back your Burning Abyss cards and your basically your Phantom Knights from being banished, which is super helpful by detaching a material. 1 copy of the Break Sword because it helps you pop cards on the field, and it's pretty helpful at that, especially working with your Bardige. 1 copy of Raider's Knight. Raider's Knight is the rank 4 that I play in this deck because basically you just use Raider's Knight to go into your copy of Arc Rebellion. Arc Rebellion being the big beat stick of the deck that's going to help you out, just OTK your opponent out of nowhere with the copy of your Stained Greaves and your copy of your Shade Brigandine. You use those 2 monsters as level 4s to go in your copy of Raider's Knight, and then Arc Rebellion, Xyz Dragon, which is pretty helpful on the entire field. Because if this card is XZ summon, you cannot be destroyed by card effects, which it protects itself from Raider's Knight's destruction effect, so it just stays on the field. You can detach material, and it gains attack equal to the original attack of all monsters on the field, and if this card has a material that's dark as a material on it, and negates the effects of all other face-up cards on the field after this card effect resolves, and you cannot declare an attack with other monsters on the field except for this card, which is not that big of a deal because you're just going to basically attack with this anyways. You play a single copy of Bardiche because it's the single best card in the entire extra deck except Dante. I gotta mention Dante because Dante made the entire deck possible. But basically what this card does is you send a Phantom Knight card from your deck to the graveyard, and then you set a Phantom Knight card from your deck to your side of the field, which is really good because you can send your copy of Fogblade, or not Fogblade, you send Boots to the graveyard, set Fogblade, and then banish Fogblade, or banish Boots from the graveyard, and then set a second Fogblade to your side of the field, which is pretty good. Boral Sword because it helps with OTKs, Access Code Talker because it gives you additional pops on the field. If you don't want to play Access Code Talker and you want to play a little bit more budget, which, I mean, besides AA Zeus, it's not terrible on the wallet with this deck, you can drop Access Code Talker and put in a copy of Appaloosa if you want to put in Appaloosa. You play a single copy of Unicorn just to spin stuff, and a single copy of Phoenix just to pop spells and traps to round out the entire extra deck. Now, this is a deck I will mention, you guys, I would totally take to a locals. I would take this to a regionals in a heartbeat and play and potentially top with this particular build exactly to the T. This deck is beautiful and I love it, and it is so much fun, and I'm excited to actually maybe do some live duels with this. I might try and do some test hands with this deck. It's super fun to play around with and very good. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell on there so you can come part of the notification squad right down there, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below because we have those awesome rewards, you guys, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.